I stood there in my red and yellow uniform, reeking of grease and French fry oil, while my former classmates circled me like vultures at our 10-year reunion. Still flipping burgers, someone laughed, champagne glass glinting under the country club lights. The rest of us became lawyers, doctors, CEOs. They called me the Burger Queen, like it was some kind of crime. My polyester shirt stuck to my skin as Madison, the town's golden girl turned corporate manager, led the mockery with her perfect smile. I forced myself to smile back, knowing they'd never understand why I was still there. Mom's medical bills, the unfinished degree, the nights I'd sacrificed everything just to keep us afloat. My name is Riley Monroe, and I used to be the biggest joke in Cedar Hill, Kentucky. That night at the reunion wasn't the first time they'd laughed at me, but it was the night something finally snapped. I'd driven straight from my shift at McDonald's because I couldn't afford to miss the hours. $8.75 an hour doesn't leave room for pride. My manager had given me exactly 30 minutes to go do whatever it is you need to do. So there I was, grease under my fingernails, hair still trapped in that regulation visor, watching my graduating class toast to their successes. Madison Gray held court near the bar, her voice carrying across the room as she regaled everyone with stories about her latest promotion. Regional manager at 28, she kept saying, like it was some kind of mantra. Her eyes found me the moment I walked in, and I saw the flicker of recognition followed immediately by delight. Not the good kind. Oh my God, is that really you? She glided over in her designer heels, a small crowd trailing behind her like she was some kind of small-town celebrity. I heard you were still at... She paused, savoring the moment. McDonald's. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Conversations around us stopped. Even the bartender paused mid-pour to stare. Someone has to make your hangover breakfast, I said, trying for humor. But my voice came out flat. For 10 years, though. Madison's laugh tinkled like broken glass. I mean, we all had our little part-time jobs in high school, but you're almost 30. The circle tightened. Jake Morrison, who'd inherited his father's car dealership, shook his head with mock sympathy. Man, tough break. Economy's been booming for everyone else. Remember when she said she was going to design clothes? Someone whispered, just loud enough for me to hear. Now she's designing Big Mac combinations. I wanted to tell them everything. How Mom's cancer came back 3 times. How I'd been 1 semester away from my degree when Dad's factory closed and he couldn't find work for 2 years. How my younger brother needed special education that insurance didn't cover. How I worked doubles and triples, 60-hour weeks that blurred together into one endless cycle of fryer alarms and customer complaints. But I knew they didn't care about the why. In Cedar Hill, you were either somebody or you were nobody, and nobody wears a McDonald's uniform to their high school reunion. It's honest work, I managed, my hands trembling slightly. Of course it is. Madison's voice dripped with false sweetness. Someone has to do it. We can't all be leaders, right? The world needs... She gestured vaguely at my uniform. Followers, too. The laughter that followed felt like physical blows. I stood there for another 5 minutes, maybe 10, letting them have their fun. Sarah Chen from calculus class made a joke about asking me for extra ketchup packets. Tom Bradley offered to tip me $1 if I could recite the lunch menu from memory. When my 30 minutes were up, I walked back to my beat-up Honda Civic, the one with the rattling exhaust pipe and the passenger door that wouldn't open from the inside. I sat in the parking lot for a moment, watching through the country club windows as my former classmates went back to their conversations, already forgetting I'd been there. The drive back to McDonald's took 12 minutes. I know because I counted every second, letting the rage build with each tick of the dashboard clock. By the time I pulled into the employee parking spot, something had crystallized inside me. They wanted to see me as nothing more than a uniform, a cautionary tale, a punchline to their success stories. They looked at me and saw failure because they couldn't imagine that someone working fast food might have dreams bigger than their small-town prejudices could comprehend. I clocked back in 3 minutes late. My manager wrote me up for it. That night, after my shift ended at 2 a.m., I sat in that empty McDonald's parking lot and made myself a promise. They could laugh now. They could toast their promotions and their perfect lives and their utter certainty that they were better than me. But I would find a way to make them choke on that laughter. Not with anger or revenge in the traditional sense, but with something they'd never see coming from someone they'd already written off. The Burger Queen was about to build herself an empire, and they wouldn't even see it coming until it was too late to do anything but bow. The weeks after the reunion were the darkest I'd ever known. Every shift became a special kind of torture. Regular customers who'd heard about my humiliation through Cedar Hill's gossip network would smirk when I handed them their change. "Aren't you Riley from Madison's story?" they'd ask. Like I was some kind of local legend for all the wrong reasons. My coworkers weren't much better. Most of them were teenagers, kids who saw me as a cautionary tale about what happens when you don't get out fast enough. They'd whisper behind the fryer, making bets about whether I'd still be there at 40, 50, 60. The new assistant manager, barely 22 with a community college degree, talked to me like I was slow, explaining tasks I'd been doing for a decade as if I couldn't possibly understand them without detailed instruction. 3 weeks after the reunion, I broke down completely. It was a Tuesday night, slow enough that I'd been sent to clean the freezer. I was sitting on a box of frozen patties, my breath coming out in clouds, tears freezing on my cheeks before they could fall. 10 years. 10 years of my life. And what did I have to show for it? A name tag that said team member and a checking account that never held more than $200. I pulled out my phone with numb fingers and scrolled through Instagram. There was Madison, posting from her corner office. Another day, another dollar, Vadyu boss babe. Corporate life. Blessed. The comments were full of hearts and congratulations. I scrolled further. Jake at a golf tournament. Sarah at a wine tasting in Nashville. Everyone living their real lives while I existed in this fluorescent purgatory. That's when I noticed something else in Madison's posts. She kept mentioning a new startup that had opened in Cedar Hill, some tech company called Innovate Co. that was supposedly going to transform our little town into the next Silicon Valley. She was their liaison, she bragged, helping them navigate local regulations and find talent. But something about her posts felt off. The language was too vague, too carefully worded. I started paying attention after that. Madison would come through the drive-thru sometimes, always on her phone, always talking too loud. That's how I learned about the kickbacks. She was steering contracts to her friends' businesses in exchange for percentages. She was inflating consultant fees and skimming the difference. She was promising the startup things the town couldn't deliver, setting them up for failure while she padded her own accounts. One night, she came in with a group of investors, showing off Cedar Hill's authentic American dining experience. She didn't recognize me at first when I took their order. The visor and hairnet were like an invisibility cloak. But I recognized them. Tech executives from Louisville, venture capitalists from Cincinnati. They were talking about a $3 million expansion, about hiring locally, about trusting Madison to guide them through it all. The local workforce here is so eager, Madison was saying. Not like those entitled city workers. These people are grateful for any opportunity. What about skilled labor? One investor asked. Madison laughed. Look around, these people will work for nothing. They don't have any other options. She gestured at me without even seeing me. To her, I was just part of the furniture. As unremarkable as the deep fryer or the soda fountain. That night, I went home to my studio apartment above the laundrette and opened my laptop for the first time in months. The screen was cracked from when I'd dropped it last year and couldn't afford to fix it properly. I stared at it for a long time, remembering the girl who'd once stayed up all night sketching designs, writing business plans, dreaming of fashion weeks and boutique openings. That girl had been slowly suffocating under polyester uniforms and grease burns. But maybe she wasn't dead yet. I started small. YouTube videos about business strategy at 3 a.m. after closing shifts. Free online courses from MIT and Stanford during my breaks. Hunched in my car with stolen Wi-Fi from the Starbucks next door. I learned about social media algorithms, about brand building, about turning victimhood into victory. My fingers, stiff from years of working the register, struggled to sketch again. The first designs were terrible, angry, desperate things that looked like what they were. The fever dreams of someone who'd forgotten how to hope. But I kept going. Every night, no matter how tired I was, no matter how much my feet hurt or my back ached, I drew, I studied, I planned. The real revelation came when I started documenting my reality. Not the polished, filtered version that everyone else posted, but the truth. The burns on my arms from the fryer. The customer who threw a milkshake at me because it wasn't thick enough. The 17-year-old shift leader who called me grandma even though I wasn't even 30. I created a TikTok account called Minimum Wage Dreams. My first video was simple, just me, sitting in my car after a 12-hour shift, still in uniform, talking about what it really meant to be essential in America. Nobody watched it. My second video, about crying in the walk-in cooler so customers wouldn't see, got 12 views. But I kept posting, because for the first time in years, I was doing something that wasn't just about surviving until tomorrow. I was building something, even if I was the only one who could see it. If they want to see me as invisible, I'll become something they can't ignore. That became my mantra, whispered during every graveyard shift, every degrading encounter, every moment when quitting would have been easier than continuing. The TikTok account was growing slowly, 50 followers, then 100, then 300, nothing viral, nothing spectacular. But they were real people. People who understood. The comments kept me going. Girl, I feel this in my soul. 5 years at Subway here. The walk-in cooler cry is so real, it hurts. Keep going, some of us need to see this. I started studying my followers obsessively. They weren't who I expected. Sure, there were other service workers, but there were also office workers who'd started in food service. Entrepreneurs who remembered their struggles, even a few executives who'd never forgotten where they came from. They weren't watching for entertainment. They were watching because I was telling a story that usually got edited out of the American dream narrative. 6 months in, everything changed with one video. I'd been experimenting with humor, finding that sarcasm hit harder than sadness. The video was simple, me, in uniform, doing a day in the life that contrasted what people thought fast food work was versus reality. What people think, flipping burgers mindlessly. Reality, calculating customer flow rates like a MIT mathematician while someone screams about pickles. It was bitter, funny, and apparently, exactly what the internet needed. I woke up to 100,000 views. By lunch, it was at 500,000. By the time I clocked in for my evening shift, it had hit 2 million and climbing. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. New followers flooded in, 50,000, 100,000, 250,000. Messages from people sharing their own stories. Business inquiries I didn't know how to answer. 3 verified accounts wanted to collaborate, but I didn't tell anyone in Cedar Hill. I kept showing up for my shifts, kept my head down, kept being invisible. The only difference was that now, when someone treated me like I was worthless, I knew that hundreds of thousands of people were watching, waiting to see what happened next. The real breakthrough came from a comment on one of my videos. Your uniform tells a story. Why not make it fashion? That night, I pulled out my old sewing machine, the one Mom had given me for my 18th birthday when I still had dreams. I took one of my worn-out uniforms, the one with the permanent grease stains and the faded logo, and I transformed it, cut, resewn, reimagined. It became a jacket, streetwear style, with the McDonald's colors turned into something bold instead of humiliating. The grease stains became part of the design, like battle scars. I posted a photo at 3 a.m., exhausted but exhilarated. They gave me a uniform. I made it armor. The response was instantaneous. Where can I buy this? This is art. Turning corporate oppression into fashion is the most punk thing I've ever seen. Within a week, I had 300 pre-orders. People wanted to wear their service industry past as a badge of honor, not shame. Former Walmart employees sent me their vests. Ex-Starbucks baristas mailed their aprons. Each piece told a story of survival, of dreams deferred but not destroyed. I named the brand Grease and Glory. Learning to run a business while working full-time at McDonald's nearly killed me. I studied legal requirements on my 15-minute breaks. I figured out shipping logistics in the parking lot before shifts. I sewed orders from midnight to 4 a.m., then showed up to work breakfast at 5 a.m. My apartment became a factory. Fabric and thread covering every surface. The first time I made more in a week from Grease and Glory than from McDonald's, I sat on my bathroom floor and sobbed. Not from sadness, but from a feeling I couldn't name. It was like breathing after being underwater for so long you'd forgotten what air tasted like. But still, I told no one in Cedar Hill. Not when BuzzFeed wrote an article about the McDonald's employee revolutionizing working-class fashion. Not when my TikTok hit 1 million followers. Not when celebrities started wearing my designs. Posting about authentic American working-class chic. Madison came through the drive-thru one day, complaining on her phone about how impossible it is to find good help these days, and how some people just lack ambition. She ordered her usual, a Diet Coke and a salad, no dressing, and didn't even look at me when I handed her the change. "Keep the change," she said, tossing me 37 cents like she was doing charity. I kept the coins, added them to a jar I'd started keeping, labeled motivation. Every insult, every dismissive gesture, every moment of disrespect became fuel. They thought they were keeping me down. But they were actually building me up, one small humiliation at a time. My online community grew stronger. We called ourselves the Service Sector Survivors. We shared our stories, our struggles, our small victories. A Walmart cashier in Texas getting her degree. A janitor in Detroit starting his own cleaning company. A Taco Bell worker in Phoenix learning to code. We were all invisible to the people we served, but we saw each other clearly. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very job that Madison and the others mocked me for had become my strength. Every terrible customer, every degrading task, every moment of disrespect became content, authentic, raw, real content that resonated with millions who'd been where I was. "You still taking orders, or are you daydreaming about a better life?" My shift manager snapped one day, catching me checking my phone. "Still taking orders," I replied quietly, slipping my phone back into my pocket. The notification I'd been reading was from my business account, showing that week's revenue, $12,000, and climbing. The first time I hit $70,000 in a single week, I was scrubbing the McDonald's bathroom floor at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. The notification popped up on my phone, which I'd propped against the cleaning supplies cart. A massive order from a boutique chain in Los Angeles, 500 pieces of the Midnight Shift collection. My hands were still in yellow rubber gloves, knees on the grimy tile, when I became wealthier than most of Cedar Hill's successful residents. The success had snowballed faster than I could process. First, it was individual orders, then small boutiques. Then a viral moment when a famous rapper wore one of my reconstructed uniforms to a music festival, calling it the realest fashion in America. The caption? "We all started somewhere. Respect the hustle." My TikTok had exploded to 3.8 million followers. Every video now averaged 5 million views. The comment sections became gathering places for workers worldwide, sharing their stories, their struggles, their dreams. I started doing live sessions from my car after shifts, still in uniform, talking about everything from financial literacy to fighting imposter syndrome when you come from nothing. The money was surreal. $30,000 one week, $45,000 the next, then $70,000, and it kept climbing. But I maintained my routine with religious discipline. McDonald's shift from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 5 p.m. to 2 a.m., depending on the schedule. Business operations from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. or 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Sleep when I could. Repeat. I hired virtual assistants to handle shipping, but I still personally designed every piece, responded to as many messages as I could, and kept creating content that mattered. The brand wasn't just about clothes anymore, it was a movement. Grease and Glory became shorthand for turning stigma into strength. The late-night talk show invitation came through my manager. Yes, I finally had a manager, someone who understood my vision and worked remotely from New York. They want you on Tomorrow Tonight with James Morrison, she said during one of our video calls, while I sat in the McDonald's parking lot on break. When? Next month. They'll fly you to New York, put you up in a hotel, the whole thing. I'll need to request time off, I said, already dreading that conversation. My McDonald's manager acted like I'd asked for his kidney. 2 days off, during a weekday. Riley, you know we need reliable people. This job should be your priority. I nodded, said nothing. Took the write-up for lack of commitment to the team when he only gave me 1 day approved. I flew to New York and back in 24 hours, did the interview in a custom Grease and Glory piece made from 7 different fast food uniforms, and made America cry with the story of my mother counting out change to buy my brother's medication while I worked doubles to cover rent. The interview went viral. 20 million views in 3 days. Orders crashed my website twice. But in Cedar Hill, life continued as if nothing had changed. I still drove the same beat-up Civic, partly for authenticity, mostly because buying a new car in town would raise questions. I still lived in the studio above the laundrette, still worked every shift, still took every insult, still remained invisible. The beauty was in the anonymity. Madison came through the drive-thru the day after my talk show appearance aired, bragging to someone about how she'd just secured another contract with Innovate Co. Small-town people are so easy to impress, she laughed. Show them a little attention, throw them a few crumbs, and they think you're a savior. Your total is $7.83, I said quietly. She handed me a 10 without looking up from her phone. God, I can't wait to get out of this place. Once this Innovate Co. deal fully vests, I'm gone. Let these losers serve each other fast food. I counted her change slowly, deliberately. 2.17s. Each coin placed carefully in her manicured hand. She drove off without a word, leaving me standing at the window, watching her Mercedes disappear. That night, I did something I'd been putting off. I incorporated officially, set up proper business banking, hired a CFO. The numbers were staggering. In 6 months, Grease and Glory had generated $1.4 million in revenue. After costs, I was profiting nearly $900,000. The projection for the next year, $8 million, conservative estimate. I also started a scholarship fund, anonymously, for Cedar Hill High School students who wanted to pursue fashion or business. The only requirement, they had to currently work in food service or retail. The first recipient was a 16-year-old girl who worked at Subway, whose portfolio of sketches reminded me of myself at that age. A journalist from the New York Times reached out, wanting to do a profile on the mysterious founder of Grease and Glory who still works at McDonald's. I declined. A documentary filmmaker offered $100,000 for exclusive access to my story. I declined. Everyone wanted to know why someone with $1 million business still worked for minimum wage. The truth was simple and complex all at once. Leaving would mean they won. Every shift I worked, every uniform I wore, every moment I stayed invisible while building an empire. It was all part of something bigger than revenge. It was proof that they were wrong about people like me. We weren't worthless. We weren't lazy. We weren't lacking ambition. We were just underestimated. The sweetest moment came when I overheard 2 teenage coworkers talking about Grease and Glory, not knowing I was listening. Did you see that new drop? The Overnight Warrior collection? Man, if I had money, I'd cop that jacket. The founder's a genius, the other one said. Turned being broke and overlooked into a whole empire. They say she still works a regular job somewhere, staying connected to the struggle. That's real. The first one nodded. Not forgetting where you came from. I smiled, continued refilling the napkin dispensers, and said nothing. My phone buzzed with another notification. A collaboration offer from a major fashion house worth $2.8 million. I silenced it and got back to work. There were still 3 hours left on my shift, and the floor needed mopping. The business conference in Louisville was exactly the kind of place where Cedar Hill's elite went to feel important. I wasn't supposed to be there. It was a $500 ticket event for regional business leaders and innovators. But my fashion brand had been invited to showcase in the vendor hall, and I decided it was time to step out of the shadows, just a little. I wore a simple black suit, tailored perfectly, my own design, made from reclaimed fabric but indistinguishable from high-end designer wear. My hair was pulled back, my McDonald's damaged hands hidden under subtle nail polish. I looked like money, but the kind that didn't need to announce itself. The vendor booth for Grease and Glory was intentionally understated. No flashy banners, just elegant displays of the clothes and a simple sign with our motto, "Every thread tells a story of survival." I was adjusting a jacket display when I heard her laugh, that crystalline, practiced sound that had haunted my worst shifts. Madison was holding court near the coffee station, surrounded by a small group of admirers, her voice carrying across the convention center. "Small-town business is all about knowing your worth," she was saying. "Take my work with Innovate Co. They needed someone who understood the local landscape, someone with connections, someone who could deliver value." She turned, probably to grab another coffee, and our eyes met. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. Why would she? Out of context, without the uniform, without the grease smell and the visor, I was just another conference attendee. But then something flickered in her eyes. Confusion, recognition, disbelief cycling through in rapid succession. "Riley?" Her voice pitched up at the end, uncertain. "Madison," I kept my tone neutral, professional. She walked over slowly, like she was approaching something that might not be real. Her eyes took in my suit, my booth, the clothes on display. I watched her process it, try to make sense of it. "What are you? Are you working this event? Did McDonald's send you to cater?" "I'm a vendor," I said simply, handing her a business card. "Grease and Glory. We're a fashion brand." She took the card like it might burn her, staring at it, then at me, then at the booth. "This is yours?" "Founded it about a year ago." I watched her scan the booth more carefully now, noting the price tags, $208 for a jacket, $150 for a shirt, the professional photography, the steady stream of interested browsers. Her mouth opened and closed several times. "But you still..." "I saw you at McDonald's last week." "You did." "I don't understand." I could have explained, could have told her about the $1 million revenue, the celebrity clients, the fashion house collaboration, could have mentioned the talk show appearance she'd obviously missed, the magazine features, the documentary offers. Instead, I just smiled. "Not everyone announces their success, Madison. Some of us prefer to let the work speak for itself." She was scrambling now, trying to reconcile this version of me with the one she'd categorized and dismissed. "This is incredible. We should talk about opportunities. Innovate Co. is always looking for local success stories. I could introduce you to people, help you scale, maybe even invest." "I appreciate the offer," I interrupted gently. "But I'm quite happy with my current trajectory." "But think about what you could do with proper backing, real connections." "Madison," I met her eyes directly. "My company generated 7 figures last quarter. I have distribution in 14 countries. Anna Winter's assistant called me personally last week. I don't need your connections." The words landed like physical blows. She actually stepped back. 7 figures. Her voice was barely a whisper. "This quarter alone." "But then why? Why do I still work at McDonald's?" I finished for her. "Because that job, that uniform, that life you and everyone else mocked, that's my truth. That's my customer's truth. Every time someone treats me like I'm worthless because I'm serving them fries, they're showing me exactly why my brand needs to exist." A small crowd had gathered at my booth, drawn by the designs. A young woman was trying on one of the signature jackets, looking at herself in the mirror with something like recognition, like hope. Madison watched this, then looked back at me. "I could have helped you, back then, if you'd just asked." "When would I have asked, Madison? When you were calling me the Burger Queen? When you were using me as a cautionary tale at parties? When you were telling investors that people like me are grateful for any opportunity?" Her face went pale. You heard that? I hear everything. Invisible people usually do. She straightened, trying to regain her composure, switching back to business mode. Well, regardless of the past, we should collaborate now. Your story, combined with my connections. No. The word hung between us, simple and final. No. I don't collaborate with people who see service workers as props for their success stories. I don't need someone to legitimize what I've built. And I certainly don't need validation from someone who only sees value in people after they've proven they're worth something. Her face flushed red. That's not fair. I've always supported local business. You've always supported what benefits you, I corrected. There's a difference. A customer approached, asking about sizing for one of the jackets. I turned to help them, effectively dismissing Madison, but she didn't leave immediately. I felt her standing there, watching me interact with customers, watching people excitement over my designs, watching me be someone she'd never imagined I could be. When I turned back, she was walking away, her heels clicking against the convention center floor with less confidence than they'd had when she arrived. Later, I saw her at the networking mixer, trying to tell someone about discovering this amazing local success story, and how she'd always known Riley had potential. But her heart wasn't in it. She kept glancing over at me, surrounded by interested buyers and fashion bloggers, clearly trying to understand how she'd missed it. The truth was, she hadn't missed anything. She'd seen exactly what she'd wanted to see. Someone beneath her, someone to make her feel superior, someone whose struggles validated her success. She just never imagined that someone might be taking notes the whole time. 3 years had passed since that conference. I hadn't set foot in Cedar Hill during that time, building my empire from New York, Los Angeles, Milan, anywhere but home. The brand had exploded beyond my wildest dreams. Grease and Glory was now valued at $50 million, with flagship stores in 12 cities. I'd been featured on Forbes' 30 Under 30. Vogue called me the designer who turned minimum wage into maximum impact. But Cedar Hill hadn't forgotten me. I knew this because my mom still lived there, and she kept me updated. The town newspaper had run stories about their hometown success story, though none of them mentioned that I'd served most of their editorial staff coffee and burgers for a decade. Madison had tried to claim credit for mentoring me, according to Mom. The McDonald's where I'd worked had put up a small plaque about their famous former employee. They'd rewritten the narrative, as I knew they would. But I had one last chapter to write. I returned on a gray Thursday morning, driving a rental car. Nothing flashy, just reliable. The town looked smaller than I remembered, like something that had been keeping me trapped was actually just held together with gossip and narrow minds. Main Street was quieter. Innovate Co. had pulled out 6 months ago. Apparently, after discovering Madison's embezzlement, she'd been quietly let go from her position. Though the town had hushed it up, a few stores had closed. The country club where that reunion happened had lost members, but the McDonald's was still there, looking exactly the same. I parked across the street and watched for a while. The morning rush was starting, the same faces, 3 years older, ordering the same meals. Through the window, I could see new kids in polyester uniforms, looking dead-eyed and desperate, just like I had. I walked in through the front door. The smell hit me immediately, that mixture of fryer oil and cleaning solution that had clung to my hair for years. The manager on duty was someone new, but I recognized several crew members. They looked through me, just another customer. I ordered a coffee and sat in the corner booth where I used to take my breaks. When they gave me breaks, the vinyl was still cracked in the same place. Someone had carved "This place sucks" into the table. Maybe me. Maybe someone else with the same thoughts. An hour later, I walked to the counter and asked to speak to the owner. He came out from the back, Bill Harrison, who owned 3 franchises and drove a Porsche while paying his workers minimum wage. "Can I help you?" He didn't recognize me either. "I'd like to discuss a business proposition." We sat in his cluttered back office, the same one where I'd been written up countless times for being 2 minutes late, for not smiling enough, for taking too long in the bathroom. "I want to buy this location," I said simply. He laughed, This place nets $400,000 a year. You couldn't afford it. I placed a cashier's check on his desk. That's my offer, cash, no financing needed. His laughter died when he saw the number. It was more than fair, generous even. His eyes went from the check to my face, trying to place me. Riley Monroe, I said finally. I used to work for you. The recognition was beautiful to watch. His mouth fell open, his face went red, then pale. He'd been one of the worst, constantly berating workers, cutting hours to avoid paying benefits, making teenage girls cry in front of customers. You, he breathed. Me. The sale went through in 30 days. I kept it quiet, instructing lawyers to handle everything discreetly. The staff didn't know until I walked in on a Monday morning as the new owner. The first thing I did was raise everyone's wage to $22 an hour. The second was to guarantee full benefits. The third was to establish a tuition reimbursement program. The fourth was to rename it, not Grease and Glory. That was too obvious. Just Monroe's. The news spread through Cedar Hill like wildfire. Madison showed up on the third day, pretending to be happy for me, fishing for information, trying to understand how someone she'd dismissed could buy out Bill Harrison. It's so great what you're doing for the community, she said, fake smile plastered on. Giving back to where you started. I'm not giving back, I corrected her. I'm investing in people who deserve it. There's a difference. She left quickly after that. The old workers, the ones who'd witnessed my humiliation, didn't know how to act around me. But the new ones, the teenagers and 20-somethings grinding through shifts, they got it immediately. They saw me show up at 5 a.m. to work alongside them. Not as a stunt, but because I remembered. They watched me handle rude customers with the patience only someone who'd been there could have. One night, after closing, I stood in the empty restaurant with Maria, a 19-year-old who reminded me of myself. Smart, ambitious, stuck. She was mopping, and I was counting the till. And she suddenly said, "They tell stories about you, about how you made it out." I never left, I told her. I just figured out how to make here work for me instead of against me. She nodded, understanding in a way that Madison and her crowd never could. The town didn't know how to handle me now. I wasn't asking for their approval or their acknowledgement. I wasn't trying to join their clubs or their circles. I'd simply returned, bought one of their institutions, and transformed it into something that served the people they'd ignored. Some called it revenge. Others called it justice. I called it a beginning. Because there were 3 other franchises in surrounding towns, and I had my eye on all of them. Every kid working night shifts to pay for community college, every single parent juggling 3 jobs, every person who'd been told they were worthless because of their uniform. They were my people. And I was building something for us. Madison's Mercedes still drove through town sometimes, but less often. The country club had closed. Innovate Co.'s empty building was for sale. The old order was crumbling, and from its ashes, something new was growing, something that smelled faintly of French fries and strongly of hope. I sit in my Nashville penthouse now, 20 floors above the city lights. But I keep 3 things on my desk. My last McDonald's uniform, folded neatly with the name tag still attached. The first camera I used to film TikTok videos, held together with duct tape. And my resignation letter, the one I never sent. The uniform still smells faintly of fryer oil. Some stains never come out. And I'm glad. They're reminders that every thread of my success was woven from those grueling shifts, those dismissed dreams, those moments when I was nothing more than a uniform to the people I served. A notification pops up on my phone. Another order just shipped, 1,000 units of our newest collection to a retailer in Tokyo. The design features subtle golden arches worked into streetwear aesthetic, so subtle most people won't even notice. But service workers will. They always do. Another message comes through, this one more important. It's from Keisha, a young woman who works the night shift at a Taco Bell in Detroit. She's been following my story since the beginning. And now she's launching her own brand, turning discarded food service uniforms into laptop bags for college students working their way through school. Her message is simple. Thank you for showing me it was possible. These messages matter more than the Forbes features or the Fashion Week invitations. They're proof that what I built transcends revenue and recognition. It's a movement of people refusing to be defined by others' limitations. I pull up my latest financial statement. Grease and Glory is now valued at $75 million. My personal net worth crossed $30 million last month. The Monroe's franchises, I own 7 now, employ 400 people at living wages. The scholarship fund has sent 32 kids to college. The foundation I started has provided startup capital to 150 service workers launching their own businesses. But the number that matters most is this: 4.7 million followers who tune in every week to watch me talk about building empires from minimum wage, about turning invisibility into invincibility, about the power of refusing to disappear. Madison sent me a LinkedIn request last week. I left it pending, not out of cruelty, but because some bridges are meant to stay burned. She's working at a small marketing firm 2 towns over now, according to Mom, the kind of place that would have seemed beneath her 3 years ago. Karma has its own timeline. I think about Cedar Hill often. That small town that tried to make me small too. They've rewritten history now, claiming they always knew I'd make it, that they supported me from the beginning. The mayor even declared a Riley Monroe Day last month. I didn't attend, because the truth is more powerful than their revision. Every person who laughed at my uniform, who undertipped me, who told me I was wasting my life, they're all part of this story. Their dismissal was my fuel. Their mockery was my motivation. Their blindness to my potential became my greatest advantage. I still work. Not at McDonald's anymore, but the work ethic remains. 18-hour days are normal. But now those hours build something mine, something meaningful. Something that proves every Madison in every small town wrong about people like us. The young woman from the Cedar Hill McDonald's, Maria, texts me. She's been accepted to FIT in New York. Full ride, thanks to the scholarship. She's going to study fashion merchandising. She wants to build something too. I tell her she already has. She just doesn't know it yet. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with venture capitalists who want to take Grease and Glory international. Next week, I'm speaking at Harvard Business School about authentic brand building from the bottom up. Next month, I'm launching a program to help service workers monetize their stories, their skills, their survival. But tonight, I stand at my window, looking out at Nashville's skyline. And I think about that girl crying in the McDonald's freezer, sitting on boxes of frozen patties, wondering if this was all life would ever be. I wish I could tell her that every tear was an investment. Every insult was inspiration. Every moment of invisibility was actually preparation for something bigger. I couldn't see it then, but I was never really trapped in that uniform. I was being forged in it. The grease, the burns, the aching feet, the dismissed dreams. They weren't breaking me down. They were building me up. My phone rings. It's my CFO with news about another acquisition opportunity. As I answer, I catch my reflection in the window. Designer clothes, manicured nails, success written in every line. But underneath it all, I'm still that girl in the polyester uniform. Still fighting, still proving them wrong, still building empires from the things they said would bury me. They used to laugh at me for making burgers. Now I've built an empire from exactly that. And the beautiful thing? This is just the beginning. Every day, another service worker decides they're done being invisible. Another dreamer in a uniform starts planning their escape. Another person society dismissed starts building something undeniable. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're not waiting for approval. We're not hoping to be seen. We're too busy building kingdoms from the foundations they never thought to look at. The penthouse is quiet except for the hum of the city below. Somewhere down there, someone is working a closing shift, dreaming of more, and maybe, just maybe, they'll remember that someone else once stood where they stand, felt what they feel, and turned it all into gold, not despite the grease and the burns and the disrespect, because of them. Thank you so much for listening to Riley's story. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What's your own Grease and Glory moment? I read every comment, and your stories inspire me to keep sharing these narratives of triumph against the odds. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories of revenge, redemption, and rising above.